online, on Radio Player, and on 106.6 FM. This is Wycombe Sound, the Wycombe Wanderers Show.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Wycombe Wanderers Show. I'm Colin, he's Bob.
Actually, it's a previous edition. No, not really.
We haven't got many editions left.
No, we haven't. What, two after tonight?
Yes, there'll be extra time. We'll be into extra time then.
Oh dear, yes, I know. It's a bit sad, really, isn't it? I can't believe that the season's coming to a rapid close.
No, and what a journey it's been.
What a season it's been. A long road to hoe.
Definitely, but I'm thinking back to the early run of defeats, obviously, but it's so fantastic getting your first goal in the Championship, and this is like the wrapping up. This will be the last show. We'll talk about it more, obviously, but the last goal, the first goal, I should say, the first points, it seems like such a long time ago now.
It really does, and actually that period seemed to take such a long time to pass, sort of like waiting for even the first goal and then the first point and then the first win. That seemed to go on for a few months, to be honest. I know it wasn't quite that long, but it really did. And also it only seems like yesterday, and now here we are, we've only got 2 games to go, and we're still not yet officially relegated, which I think is, again, reason for celebration.
Absolutely, yes. Still mathematically possible. We need quite a goal swing in our favour, admittedly. It's something like 13-0 for each game would be ideal.
Yeah. I mean, it's not quite that dramatic, is it? So say we could win the next 2 like 3-0, and Derby could lose one of theirs 4-0 and one of theirs 3-0, then I think that would just about see us right.
Oh, fantastic! Doesn't sound quite so bad now.
So exactly. So it could happen. It could still be on. Not really. Well,
Yes, don't get your hopes up.
It would be a miracle, yes.
Coming up this week, then, we'll reflect on Bob's trip to South Wales, which sounds like some sort of holiday report, but you went to Cardiff.
Indeed. I did, yes. Noswyth Da. It was very nice. I had a good time in Cardiff. Had some very good fish and chips. You always have to sample the local produce, I think. And heard from Gareth after the game as well, so we shall be playing that.
And also we'll hear from Joe Jacobson. Well, I say here, you'll try to hear from Joe Jacobson. You need some close listening. Also, we say, here's to you, Andy Robinson. Is that too cheesy?
Oh, very good, very good. Yes, looking forward to hearing your interview with Andy. And we'll also be catching up with Matt Cecil as well, ahead of the club joining a social media boycott, which starts tomorrow.
So, reflecting first of all on the game against Cardiff on Saturday, and there was, I think, well, certainly myself anyway, went into it with such optimism, and it's quite an exciting period, isn't it? Because you were looking at other games and thinking, well, hopefully that'll go in our favour as well, and we're on a bit of a decent bit of momentum. Things could be going well. It
really did feel, that there was still a chance, and the fact that we'd then beaten Bristol City, and so to then go a goal down was a bit like, oh dear, and to then see that some of the other results weren't necessarily going our way, because if you remember, Derby actually took the lead, even though they ended up losing, but that was pretty late on. So for quite a lot of the game, really, it was sort of being watched with a sense of foreboding. Fantastic that we got an equaliser. But obviously then Cardiff scored again, and you never quite felt that we were really going to get back into it, even though we had a good go, and David Stockdale did go up for a few corners at the end, which was exciting, but unfortunately the lightning wasn't to strike twice with regards to Stockdale saving Wycombe.
It must have been such a great feeling though, actually going to the game and having that anticipation.
Yeah, it really was. It was great to still see again. I know that we keep saying it, but actually, at this late stage of the season, that actually we're still there, albeit in with the most minor of shouts. I think a lot of people probably had written us off and said that we would be relegated, say, by at least the end of March. And the fact that here we are still right at the end of the season, and that we even have these permutations to look at and think, oh, well, you never know if this happens and that happens. Yes, okay, it's not going to happen now, or it would be a complete miracle if it did. But the fact that on Saturday, there was still a chance. And as I say, it was, slightly disappointing that Derby then took the lead and then Cardiff took the lead. But Wycombe battled very, very well, as you would normally expect. They still were completely up for it, and I would imagine as they will be for the last 2 games. Even if they go down, Gareth isn't going to let them rest on their laurels. He very much wants to take it to the final game of the season. You know, that would be brilliant, and we can do that simply by matching Derby's result on Saturday. And also how fantastic it would be actually not to finish 24th. You know, if we could climb above Sheffield Wednesday, or Rotherham, you know, that would still be a real achievement.
As you'll hear from the man himself, who spoke to Bob after the game.
Gareth, personally, I feel a bit gutted. How are you doing?
You're probably more gutted than me. I know the status of this club, and if you look at long-term plans rather than one game or one season, I'm so excited about what the future holds for this club. We've got some structure in place. Having this, you know, this early promotion to the Championship last year was something that we could have only dreamed of. My biggest disappointment is the fans not being able to come and watch us. Even the situation we're in, I know the fans would have wanted to come here and see this, and be with us and pick us up when we need them. But I'll do all the picking up that everyone needs to do. And my challenge now is let's not finish bottom of the league. And the positive is there's a chance to get another promotion on the CV now, and I'll be properly aiming for that.
Slightly cheeky question. Are you the man that will be leading Wycombe back into the Championship?
A very cheeky question. At the moment, I am the Wycombe Wanderers manager, and I am so proud to be there. And you will have my all to get back to this Championship, because I've loved it. And you know what? We've learned so much. We will definitely not be losing the first 7 games next time, and we'll be very competitive. It's just now getting back here, because that league below seems pretty competitive. It's a mini Championship in itself. But, you know, Wycombe Championship, well, 5 years ago, we'd have been laughed at if we'd have started speaking like this. So I'm really proud, and, like I say, really, really looking forward to picking everyone up at the club.
And you look back at those games against Torquay and the playoff final against Southend, and you look where they are now, and you look where we are, and, you know, it is just an incredible story.
Unbelievable story, and I hope people do look back and put things in perspective. We're a million miles away from being a Championship outfit, but we were 10 million miles away before we got to the Championship, and we got Rob Couhig and Pete Couhig involved. We'll get there, and for me to have played a part in any of that, I'm really proud, really honoured, and like I say, the people of Wycombe can sleep safe that I'm totally committed to doing this job, and I really, really enjoy managing this football club.
A lawnmower in the background of your chat with Gareth, but stand by for a much more prominent lawnmower shortly.
Joe Jacobson actually on the lawnmower.
The lawnmower will be the real star of the interview with Joe Jacobson, but you'll have to listen hard to know he's there. And Alicia Povey asking the questions. Again, something which you might not realise whilst listening. But yes, interesting about your cheeky question.
Yes, I know. Well, I thought, you know, I wanted to find out, and I thought it was quite a positive response, really.
A very positive response.
You know, he's talked a lot about sort of like bringing us back into the Championship, and, you know, very much yes, without quite saying yes, I'll definitely be the manager next season. You know, I think that was about as positive as we could expect. So the people of Wycombe can sleep easy, I think was the quote, wasn't it?
Absolutely, especially listening to Mid-Morning the other morning, where we had some top sleep tips as well. Sort of counting sheep, apparently. But
I like the way that you're always now trying to wangle something about mid-mornings into the show. I'm just now looking at the next permanent Preston manager odds. Gareth is still very much the favourite, 2-1 on. Nicky Butt 4-1, Frankie McElvoy 12-1, and then various other people at 20-1. But anyway, you know, possibly they haven't heard the Wycombe Wanderers show, as maybe Gareth's odds might go out slightly from 2-1 on.
But nice to feel we can have an impact on that sort of thing.
Yes, it would be nice to think so.
The odds-altering Wycombe Wanderers show.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. That would be something to put on the advertising banners for our programme.
So before we try to hear from him, tell us a bit about Joe Jacobson's contribution, obviously scoring against his former club.
Yeah, indeed. You know, I mean, clearly the fact that it was his former club, the fact that he had played for them and played in the Championship for, you know, all of those years ago, you know, it was fantastic to see that, you know, that he did manage to get one back for Wycombe. And yeah, you know, just really, really a nice story, because obviously he started at Cardiff, is a Cardiff fan, so, you know, it must be really exciting to to go back there and actually manage to play and score.
So, I'm about to do some satire. If you want to test your eyesight, you can drive to a castle. If you want to test your hearing, listen to Joe Jacobson and a lawnmower at Cardiff.
We've always been the same for the 7 years I've been here. The Gaffers still don't give up, don't finish until the final whistle, every single game, every week, whatever the situation. I thought we did that again today. I think we're throwing balls in the box. Stocko was up again, nearly getting on the end of things. There was chances, there was melees in the box, but we couldn't quite get that little bit of quality at the end just to get the goal. But we'll never say die. We'll always keep going. And, as long as I'm on the pitch, I'll be one of those gather momentum, gather players to keep going. I think it showed today with the players out on their feet at the end of the game that we do give that.
And obviously the boys will be disappointed going in at the end of that game. But what's Gareth's message to you?
He's just said he's excited. He's been saying it for a while now. He's excited not just for this season, but for next season, the future of the football club. I think, with Rob and Pete coming in and securing the kind of infrastructure of the club and the vision that they've got for the club is awesome to be a part of. And whether or not I'm here for a long time to see all that, but look, when the gaffer gets excited, he doesn't help but to gather you in it. And he kind of, he's standing there doing his wooing and his joking and shouting and things like that he does, and I think you can't help but be infectious with that. And we just want to run through brick walls for him a lot of the time, and it's exciting. There's no other way of doing it. The boys are gutted in there, a lot of them, but we've got to pick ourselves up. We've got another game next week, and I know it's not officially over, and while that's not the case, then there's still hope and belief, and we've just got an exciting couple of weeks to prepare for them.
And a top one coming up against Bournemouth, how are the boys going to look to rebuild?
I think we've said, whatever happens, let's try and take momentum into next season. And there'll be teams who just filter off, finish mid-table and nothing to play for, and it's hard for them just to get going and motivated. But, with the gaffer in charge, he won't let that happen. He's going to make sure we're on it, we're enjoying ourselves. We've got nothing to lose. We're going to go into the game trying to win the football match again and hopefully buy a few goals just to keep it alive. But we still want to keep momentum going. Whatever division we're in next season, we want to make sure that we finish this season on a high and start next season the same way.
You'll be pleased to know that he did actually escape via the helicopter, and it sounds like he's clinging on to the skid pad, doesn't it? And Liz is hanging out this with the microphone.
It sounds like it sounds like a sort of radio version of Treasure Hunt, which I think definitely could happen with Alicia. Look
at another one retro mentions we've had.
Indeed, absolutely. Alicia would be Annika Rice, and Joe Jacobson would be the guy like the camera and sound man all in one.
Fantastic. Trumpton, Porridge. Oh, you should dig up that Porridge clip for later.
Oh, yes, indeed, yes. And I have to apologise about the Porridge clip from last week.
Yeah, there's been a Porridge error.
There was slightly, yes. So I said that I thought it was either Godber or Fletcher that had said the line, which one's the goodie? But actually, I was wrong about that. It was Bunny Warren who said that.
If you didn't hear last week's show, you're probably scratching your head now thinking... Don't understand.
How on earth did they managed to get a reference to Porridge into the Wycombe Wanderers show? Well, we did. You have to listen back to the
podcast.
To find out. Yes.
It'll be in our greatest hits show as well. While I think of it, this just popped into my mind. I must mention that next week, to look ahead to the final game of the season, we'll be catching up with Alan Phillips in our former player slot. He captained the side against Middlesbrough. See what we've done there? Thanks to JDT for timing.
Very clever, yeah.
In the third round of the FA Cup in 1975.
Which was an absolutely huge game.
Absolutely, yes. Took them to a replay.
Yeah, which because at the time Middlesbrough, I think, am I right in saying we're top of the table in the first division?
Joint top.
And,
Jack Charlton was a manager. Graham Souness was playing for them.
Yeah, but so just an incredible feat. That actually, that we managed to get a draw. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, lots to look forward to on our remaining shows. And then we'll have one more after that, after the final game, which we're looking to arrange something a bit special for. I don't think we can say too much more about it currently in case.
Yes, hopefully. And be playing a montage of all of the lawnmowers in the background.
Yes.
The various interviews that we've done. A best of the championship lawnmowers. And it is something actually noticeably that does not happen at Wycombe. They do not seem to get the lawnmowers out straight after the game in the way that at Cardiff they honestly, literally started the second that the full-time whistle had gone.
I think Huddersfield gets my vote.
Huddersfield was quite impressive with their lawnmowers. They've got sort of like a fleet of lawnmowers.
They've got, some of the second tier of English football's best grass cutting facilities.
It won't be such a problem next year.
No. People will just be using secateurs, maybe.
Yes, the Sunderland Flymo.
Or streamers. Perhaps streamers is more of a thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I don't know, maybe Accrington use the streamers.
Yeah. Just in case, because I'm not sure. Have we sort of done with Cardiff? I think we have, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we have. So the only other notable thing that actually happened.
Your trip. I've just remembered.
Yeah, coming back from Cardiff was a bit of a surprise. So I stopped. So I stopped first of all for some fish and chips in Cardiff, just a completely random fish and chip shop, which turned out to possibly be the best fish and chips I've ever had. So if you're, I think it was called Bintan's. So if you're in Cardiff, and it's a little chain of fish and chip shops, if you find Binton's Fish and Chip Shop in Cardiff, I can definitely recommend it. It was the tastiest fish that I think I've ever had. But anyway, so it was a little while. It took me a little while to get going back down the M4. That's what I'm trying to say. Stopped at the Lee Delamere services on the M4.
Service station spotters, take note.
Indeed, yes. And to my surprise, saw Uchi in the service station, and to which I assumed that actually I was going to see the whole team, so I got quite excited. But no, I'm not quite sure whether he'd missed the coach or whether the coach had dropped him off at Lee Delamere. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, it was quite exciting to spot Uchi, because obviously we haven't been doing quite so well with the player spotting, because you saw Uchi in, was it Sainsbury's?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, and I saw Daryl Horgan earlier on this year, or earlier on in the season, in Sainsbury's. So this is now our third spot, although whether it counts as a third spot, considering it's the same player. But anyway, Uchi at a service station, I thought was quite a good spot.
It does sound like now I need to spend more time at service stations. I wonder perhaps if I went to Beaconsfield services and just sort of waited there for a bit, that might happen.
Yeah, Beaconsfield services always feels like a night out to me, or certainly before the pandemic. Indeed, it is, because it's got its Nando's and whatever. You do feel like actually Beaconsfield services is a place that people go just to hang out. Whether that's the Wycombe Wanderers staff, I don't know. But Uchi, definitely, it was him, because he had his Wycombe Wanderers badge on, and I did even speak to him. And he was wandering around Lee Delamere, but I can't quite work out what,
it's a mystery, isn't it?
Indeed, yes. Why he was there on his own. Whether he was then, I don't know, being picked up by somebody else, I've no idea.
We should try and get to the bottom of this, I think. I think Luke's looking up the fish and chip shop to see if they deliver. It was good fish and chips, but I'm not quite sure how it would be if it had to come all the way down the M4. Still to come on this week's Wycombe Wanderers show. There's a mental image. We'll be catching up with late 80s, early 90s midfielder Andy Robinson.
This is Wycombe Sound.
Still to come on the Wycombe Wanderers show, we'll be hearing from Matt Cecil from the club, talking about their backing of the social media boycott, which is taking place from tomorrow right through until a minute to midnight on Monday, an anti-discrimination move there. But first, in our fantastic series of talking to ex-players, I must say a big thank you, as always, to Alan Hutchison and JDT from the Ex-Players Association for the excellent liaising, which has given us the opportunity to speak to all manner of players from different eras. This week, the 1980s, the late 1980s and early 90s is where we're featuring in terms of midfielder Andy Robinson. And we will find out, first of all, how he became, it's an interesting story, as he'll tell you, became a Wycombe Wanderers player.
It's quite a funny story, to be honest. I finished at Carlisle. I refused a contract at Carlisle, or refused the terms at Carlisle. And a friend who'd been at Carlisle, Wycombe went on tour somewhere. I'm not sure if it was Cyprus or Malta. And they didn't have a goalkeeper. I think it was Gary Lester was the goalkeeper at the time, and Gary couldn't make it. So a lad called Steve Crompton, who I was at Carlisle with, he was asked to go along, and he went along and had such a good time, and said a good group of lads, and the standard was good. Would I fancy coming down for a trial? So I said, yeah. So I came down for a trial, and they were training at Bisham Abbey. So I stayed the night with Steve in Chalfont St Peter, and as he took his car and I followed him, we got to the roundabout at Beaconsfield, and he was in the left-hand lane, and I was about a quarter of a mile behind him. So I'm thinking, left-hand lane, he must go left down onto the M40. So obviously I go left and go towards London, and he goes right and goes towards Bisham Abbey. So by the time I'd turned round and tried the next one then, so as though I'm going to Stoke Porges, and got to Bisham Abbey, they were just coming off the training field. They'd finished. So I'd driven all the way from Manchester, where I was living at the time, down here, missed the training session, but managed to say hello to Jim Kelman. I then had to go home because I was then going to be a postman, so I had to do the test for the post office. And luckily Jim said, come down, and they were training up at the top near Handy Cross. So I came down, did a couple of sessions, and that was that, really. Enjoyed it. Jim thought I was good enough to play in his team, so I think I signed 2 years at the time.
It's fantastic to hear stories like that as well, because supporters who either may not know or may not remember that sort of thing, it's fantastic to have that kind of background, isn't it? And I'm sure as a player at the time as well, you probably didn't think this isn't anything too out of the ordinary, but it's really nice to know kind of how you arrived, if you like. Yeah.
I mean, it I could have said hello to Jim on the phone. So really, I'd travelled 8 hours round trip, if you like, stayed a night over, and not done a single bit of training. But it was nice to see that the club, even then, invested in Bisham Abbey, to use Bisham Abbey, and then to have a good training facility, which I think might have been the college's facility at the time up at Handy Cross, which is now houses, showed me that, in essence, they had better facilities than Carlisle did that were in the Football League, and the players were as good as well. So it wasn't dropping down a level in players that you would play with or the facilities that were provided.
Did you get to transfer to be a postman in the Wycombe area as well?
No. I went over, I did the test. I didn't even bother whether I passed or failed because Jim invited me back down, so made the right decision.
So what were your first impressions when you arrived at the club?
First impressions, very friendly, as I suppose most people say. Ivor looked after me, Ivor Beeks, when I first came down. He really took care of me. Graham Peart, I lived in one of Graham's houses in Chalfont St Peter for probably the first year I was down. So really made me feel welcome. The same with Jim and the players, really. But most of them were part-time, doing it for nothing at the time. The person who looked after the ground did it for nothing. Even the secretary and stuff like that, you don't really get to know as a player. They were all very friendly, welcome you to the club, and really just wanted you to do well.
A number of the ex-players that we've spoken to, it feels like that the particular period that they were at the club felt like a really special time, and obviously a lot of the players that you played with during your time there, that must have felt like quite a special period at the time as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed a lot now. I mean, we're talking 30 years. I think I left in '91 after the trophy final. I think a lot of things have changed, and obviously once they go professional and they go into the Football League, it's got to be professional, and a lot of the people that help them get there behind the scenes can no longer give their time or get put to one side, I suppose, which seems harsh, but that's the reality of a football club moving on to where they are now. But at the time, Jim liked to train on the pitch, which meant obviously the groundsman had to make sure the pitch was okay, and we trained to make sure that it was still okay for the Saturday. But that was one of his things. We play on the pitch, so we train on the pitch. The big bath down because I was at Lotts Park when I came down. The slopey pitch, the big bath in the middle of the changing rooms. Things were very, very different. But did it bring you closer together? Maybe it did. It's such a long time ago. But I know I thoroughly enjoyed my time there.
It must have been so interesting as well, because you kind of straddled the period, didn't you, with Jim Kelman in charge, and then when Martin came in as well.
Yeah. I mean, Jim, for me, in my career and in football, Jim was way ahead of his time. Way ahead. Where they talk now of tactics and systems, and he played with a sweeper and two fullbacks that pushed on, Sean Norman and Steve Abley. Even then, I remember, I think we played Fisher one night. Malcolm Allison was the manager, and he said, how you play such a boring, he classed it as 5 at the back. I think we beat them, it might have been 5-0. And Jim, he knew the game inside out, an FA man, and it was so sad when it didn't quite work out in relation to how successful he'd been in the previous year. And then obviously Martin came in, steadied the ship, I think for the first season that I was with him, and then obviously moved into the new ground, and then obviously took it on from there.
Did it really feel at the time like you were getting closer and closer to becoming a league club?
I suppose it did in my first year when we should have actually got to the trophy final in that year. We went up to Hyde on their plastic pitch, and Kevin Durham missed a good chance late on, and I think we lost 1-0, and that was our chance really to do that. From I think the previous season when Jim came in, Wycombe was struggling, which is obviously why Jim came in, and I think we finished fourth. We got to the quarter-final of the trophy. We should have done better. Could we have pushed on? As a player, you kind of don't get involved in who we could sign and who we couldn't sign, but I know Jim brought Dion Double into the club. Whether the club could afford it or not, that was Jim's thought, that we needed a centre-forward to push on. A lot of the emphasis was on John Kerr and Mark West, but we just didn't have, a big centre-forward as a focal point, or how we could change our game. So that was a little bit disappointing. And then obviously we lost, I think, in the FA Cup or the trophy to Met Police, and that was the end of it. Then that's when the supporters had kind of had enough, and Jim left and Martin came in.
And what are your memories of the final against Kidderminster itself? Because it just felt like, and we've said to other players that we've spoken to as well, but it just felt like the whole town went, and you'd see people from school or people from who lived in the area at the station or at the game, and it just felt like such a brilliant occasion. Yeah,
I mean, for the town, it was an occasion. I can't remember the figures, whether it's 40,000, but obviously 30,000 of those were from Wycombe, just 2 or 3 stops up on the train or whatever. But we were. The club looked after us. They took us to Burnham Beeches, a couple of days before the game for the build-up to it all. What can I remember? Not getting on, being on the bench, being, if you're honest, being thankful that you actually got changed and was involved, whereas, a lot of my friends at the time then didn't get changed. Gary Smith, for one, very disappointed, because, there was only 2 substitutes, myself and Simon Hutchinson. So yeah, in that aspect, disappointed that I didn't actually play. Really pleased for the lads who kept you involved in it all. But yeah, it just goes, as most people say, it just disappears. It's over. Obviously, brilliant reception when we came back to the town, at the town hall, and everything that the club put on for us. And really, I suppose that was the start, wasn't it? That was the start of the success. And then I left it. That's Martin. Martin wasn't sure whether he could offer me another contract for the next year, so I went on to Trevor Gould at Aylesbury.
And are there any other particular sort of occasions or games or moments during your time at the club which especially stand out?
If I'm honest, I enjoyed my first year at Wycombe more than any year in my career. Whereas I'd been at United as a kid, had a year and a half as a professional, had a month on loan at Burnley with Martin Buchan, went to Bury where Wilf McGuinness was, and then went to Carlisle where Harry Gregg was. So, there were some people who knew the game there, but I think from being coached and managed by Jim and the players that we had there, we had some very, very good players there that played the system well. So that first year that I went there, from not really knowing anything about non-league, as it was a conference, I think then, I really enjoyed the first year. But obviously, as time went on, when Martin came, he preferred Simon and Keithy Ryan in midfield, I suppose, with the younger legs. So the last year wasn't, it started off all right. I was in the team, and then I didn't really play. So I think, the first year was brilliant, and we kind of let ourselves down a little bit. We should have gone further in the trophy that year. I mean, like I said, great set of lads. At the end of the season, we all used to go away. So I think we went to Portugal. Mr. Beeks came, so Ivor came, Jim came, the staff, and it was just, a good group, really.
And it must be a great sense of pride for you to have made over 100 appearances, which is something you probably didn't imagine at the time when you signed.
No, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you sign, you don't know how it's going to go, really. And then you think, he was there 3 seasons, I think it was. So, we played that shows how many games we played. And in my final season, I probably only played 20 or been involved in 20. So the first 2 seasons, I kind of played every week in different positions, I suppose. So yeah, But again, it's such a long time ago now, and I still try and try and go and see some of the old boys, even older than myself, with the ex-players association, which is still good, and obviously such a shame that those loyal supporters haven't been able to watch their team in the Championship.
No, definitely. That's something that's really stood out, especially during the pandemic as well. And it's such a great thing to have the ex-players association to share experiences that you've been through, plus generations before and indeed after you at the club as well.
Yeah, because there are still. I mean, when I do manage to go, there's still people who say hello and remember me from 30 years ago. So those people are still at the club in some capacity. Others obviously say hello and are friendly, but don't really know who you are. And in football, you say, "Oh, we'll keep in touch," and we you don't really keep in touch. But good to see that Creaser's still about and doing a few bits. I see Mark West every now and again, and Gary Smith and Steve Guppy at Nashville. So Andy Kerr, I think, is in Canada. So we kind of keep in touch whenever we can, and keep in Scott. And it's nice to meet up and watch the game, but obviously to try and get everybody together is tough.
It's really nice that you are still based locally as well, because you can imagine, from other clubs, people just, as you say, move away even to other countries. But it's fantastic that you are still in the area. Yeah,
I mean, you wouldn't believe what it was like then when I first came. We like I say, we stayed in one of Graham Peart's family homes in Chalfont St Peter with another two lads. Then Steve and I bought a flat together in High Wycombe, which I still live in. Obviously, Steve's moved out, and I think things have changed. That's probably when I came that people from out of town were coming into the football club, and then it's moved on again now, where people travel and they'll move on and go somewhere else and stuff like that. But yeah, for me, I went to Aylesbury and then did a little bit with Jim at Chertsey, so kind of it suited to stay in the area really.
And you're still doing football coaching today?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I coach down at Bisham Abbey for the Fab Academy. Naz Bashir, he's a local boy who tries to give the local kids another chance that have not in their professional game. And then I do a bit of coach education at a school in Reading, the Pigott School, for kids who want to be teachers or professional coaches or leaders of some kind. So I'm still in the game, still local. Like I said, I don't see Wycombe as much as I'd like to, and I still travel up to Manchester to watch Man United. So, yeah, football is still the be-all and end-all, really.
And when, obviously, it's fantastic to see Wycombe in the second tier of English football. When they did get promoted, did you feel a special sense of I was part of that?
No, I think it's too long ago. It's great that I played. We had a decent team and stuff, but it's for other people to, definitely pleased and a little bit like, how on earth did that happen with such a small club run at the time by the supporters, or looked after by the supporters, with Dobbo and the gaffer down there. How on earth have they done that? Wycombe Wanderers in the Championship. What a feat. But no, I didn't take any definitely pleasure out of it, because it's kind of my time now. I've lived here 30 years. So no, not really any. We started that. It's down to them, the staff and the players now, and the people who still look after the club.
It's an incredible story, isn't it, as you touched on, because I think the first game I went to at Lokes Park was in 87. But from there to see, as you mentioned, teams like Fisher and Kidderminster and Kettering, and to now see them playing against, well, you can't see them unfortunately, but Adams Park against Nottingham Forest and people like that. Yeah, when
you think back to the first game at Adams Park with Nottingham Forest, I think Cloughie brought a team down because of Martin's things, and it was a pre-season friendly against Forest. But yeah, you look at the teams that have gone up, Watford, that are not far away. But the finance and the backing that they've got at Watford and Norwich, those clubs down there, they get 20, 30,000. Wycombe get 4 or 5, and they still hold their own. I mean, it's an amazing story from however many years ago it is that they were nearly out of the Football League. When I played, our main rival really was Barnet. And the difference in Wycombe in the Championship and Barnet desperately fighting to stay in the conference or the National League. When you had Stan Flashman and Barry Fry at the time, completely different. I came down 88, 89, I think. So yeah, the likes of Kevin Day, who lived in Wycombe, Wycombe boy, Westy, Wycombe boy, Gary Lester. So all those were here when I turned up, and then I think David Carroll and, like I say, Gups, Keithy Scott, Creaser, Curry, Matty Crossley, and Gups. Gups was only a young boy when I was here, and then look how he went on.
I was going to say it must have been such a great feeling to be part of that team and the characters that were there at that time.
Yeah. I mean, the team, and it was a team. There was no stars. Westy scored the goals. John Kerr scored the goals, and they didn't. They weren't the stars. They were just in the team. We didn't have a squad of 24. We probably had 16 players, and you saw that the players that Jim brought in were better than the ones that sadly disappeared, which is the same. Is the same as myself. Martin brought in players that to win football matches, and I leave and others come in, and the success carried on. And then there was a bit of a dip, wasn't there? And they got over that dip, and then have just done. Well, if you wrote a book, people wouldn't believe you. Of one game away from being in the National League to obviously a season in the Championship, and it's so sad that the fans couldn't see that, be there for that season.
No, as you say, it's a fantastic story. I really appreciate your time. It's been great to speak to you. Thank you so much.
No problem, Colin.
Really enjoyed chatting to Andy Robinson, and fantastic to reflect on a time, as I say, around that time when he started, 87 I think, just the season before, was when I first started going to, my first game I think was 87, and that was against Barnet as well.
And I was interested that he mentioned about Barnet because it was 30 years ago today that the Duke of Kent officially opened Adams Park. It had obviously been, this was the official royal unveiling. It had been open before then. Unfortunately, we lost 3-1 that night. So it's, that's why it's slightly consigned to history, I think. Barnet scored 2 very early goals.
It's funny, isn't it, how 30 years ago can seem quite a long time ago, but also not that long ago as well.
Very, very true. Yeah, and think and just remember all of the excitement about the club actually moving and their new home and whatever. And as you say, a lot of time has passed since then. But at the same time, it does also just feel a bit like maybe not yesterday, but last week.
Absolutely, or perhaps the week before.
By the way, in our continuing news series of corrections and clarifications, so I've already had to apologise about getting the porridge reference wrong. I now have to apologise to Finton's Fish and Chip Shop in Cardiff. It's Finton's, not Binton's. So if you were travelling around the Cardiff area looking for Binton's Fish and Chips, you'll be travelling for a long time. It's Finton's is the fish and chip shop that I went to on the way home.
Still to come on this week's Wycombe Wanderer show. Other corrections possibly in the next 19 minutes. We'll see what else we can get wrong. We'll be catching up with Matt Cecil from the club as well about the social media boycott plan for this weekend. Well, it starts tomorrow, actually.
This is Wycombe Sound.
Final part of the Wycombe Wanderers show. Bob said I can do this bit. Are you sure you don't want to contribute?
You can do this bit. That's fine.
Still to come, thank you. We'll be telling you about a new signing for the future. But first, you might have heard in the news, I think it was announced at the weekend. Yes, it was, Saturday night. Quite late as well, 10 o'clock, I remember. That the Premier League, EFL, lots of other governing bodies as well, Women's Super League, lots of others too, are boycotting social media channels in a protest against anti-discrimination and online racial abuse. And lots of other organisations since have shown their support as well. Obviously, Wycombe Wanderers being a championship club, one of those backing the action. And Bob's been speaking to the club's head of media, Matt Cecil, to find out a little more.
So tomorrow, the club are joining lots of other football clubs, and even now rugby and cricket clubs have also signed up into a boycott of social media. Just let us know why the club are doing this.
I think it's been highly documented across football, certainly over the last few months, that there have just been a high volume of really discriminatory, racist, offensive messages aimed at professional footballers. and those footballers, quite rightly have gone public with saying this is unacceptable, and quite often they've outed the cases and the people behind it, and in most cases the people posting these messages are anonymous. They're hiding behind anonymous screen names and photos, and really knowing that they're not going to be caught in doing so. But their actions have caused a lot of hurt and a lot of offence to a lot of people. So football is kind of united now to say something needs to change, and there's not one quick fix really. Football is asking the social media platforms to do more to clamp down on this abuse, to stop it even reaching the recipient, and to stop footballers having to open their phone and be greeted with all these vile messages that have been coming their way. So that's one thing that football wants from the social media companies, is to put this barrier in front to say these messages shouldn't be even getting through. But at the same time, there needs to be a level of education towards people to show these people that are posting these messages it's not acceptable, and this is the hurt that you're causing, and this is why you shouldn't be doing it. So it's really come to a head. Swansea City were the first club to kind of publicly say, look, we're going to boycott social media for a period of time. They did a week earlier this month. Birmingham City followed suit, and I think football collectively said, you know what, good idea, let's get behind it. And Wycombe Wanderers have taken the decision to do the same, to take part in this protest this weekend, to shut down our social media platforms, hoping that silence speaks volumes and shows people that now is the time for change, to stop this level of abuse being so prominent in society.
And I think it's fantastic that actually so many clubs and organisations, and I say even now different sports, are united against it. And over the past couple of weeks, we've all seen the power of actually when football does unite against something, how strong actually that voice is.
Yeah, and as I say, it's a silent protest which will speak volumes, and I think it will be quite an eerie place on social media. We're all used to getting our phones out of our pockets on a match day and scrolling through hundreds and thousands of posts, and there's going to be silence this weekend. There'll be nothing to read, nothing to digest. I kind of feel for the clubs that are going to have something to celebrate this weekend, whether it might be a promotion or a survival against relegation, because social media is often a place for joy and for celebration and for sharing good news. You only have to look at all the content coming out of Cheltenham Town this week. Fantastic scenes down at Wadden Road with the manager dancing in the car park in front of the fans, and that's kind of the beauty of social media. It gives us all as football fans access into our clubs that wasn't possible 10, 15, 20 years ago. The dark side of social media comes in the form of these trolls, these bullies that probably aren't football fans, that probably aren't the ones that go to games and support their teams. These are trolls in their bedrooms who just want to be noticed, want to be acknowledged in some way, and their way of doing it is posting obscene messages to footballers and hoping for the response. So, yeah, it's I work in social media. I see the joys of it. I also do see the levels of abuse. I think we're fortunate at Wycombe that we don't seem to have been the victim of it so much, but I do know that some of our players do receive abuse on a regular basis, and it's not just racist abuse. Some of it is absolutely abhorrent stuff about wives and families and kids that is senseless, it's brainless, and it requires those players to have a kind of a thick skin to it, but they shouldn't be expected to just be able to laugh it off or just shrug it off and delete it, because for some people it will really hurt them hard and potentially affect their mental health. So it's a big weekend for football. I can understand why people are sceptical about what level of change it will actually bring, but I think if it sparks that conversation and kind of brings the topic to everyone's attention, then hopefully that is a vehicle for change, and we'll see some outcome for the greater good in time to come.
And I think what is wonderful about it as well is that it is being done across such an important weekend. As you rightly say, promotion issues, relegation issues are going to be resolved this weekend. This is not just a sort of paying lip service to something and saying, oh, well, we'll do it at a time where it doesn't really matter. This is one of the key weekends of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as I say, I feel for those clubs that have something to celebrate. We could be on the other end, I suppose. We may be relegated this weekend, and I know as the administrator of our account that we would be subjected to hundreds of taunting posts from rival clubs, which we've just come to expect down the years, and maybe we'll get away with it this weekend in that regard. But it's a really important time, and as you say, it's being done at such a critical time of the season. That shows that the weight of this protest is strong, and I think most clubs across the pyramid have now pledged their support to the boycott, and I think footballers doing it as well will really make a point that this is being taken seriously. Now, ultimately, what outcome is to be driven? The social media companies, I know they're being lent on a lot to change their kind of security levels, I guess. There have been calls that every social media user should have to register a passport or a driving license number just so that those platforms know who these people are behind the accounts. And the problem is it's not just that simple. There'd be a whole lot of government rules and legislation that would need to change for that to happen. Naturally, social media is a global product, so it's not just one government that would need to agree to it. And there are a lot of reasons why it won't be possible. In some countries and some territories, people aren't actually given any form of government ID, and therefore, if you shut social media off in those territories, you're really denying people access to information and to having a voice and sharing communication. So that there are a lot of reasons why that can't happen, but social media is being lent on to say, okay, we'll find a solution then. Find something that will stop these messages being posted in the public domain and reaching these recipients. It's been this kind of sad evolution, I guess, of social media, where it now is more often seen as something negative and hurtful than what it should be, which is this great community tool to bring people together, to share good news and connecting people. So, it'll be fascinating to see how it's received this weekend. It'll be interesting to see how many clubs and players, don't kind of subscribe to it. Now, we have some players in our squad who have their own reasons for not wanting to take part in the boycott, and the club fully supports them in doing so. And if they continue to post, then they have, the club's absolute backing and support in that. There are reasons for and against it, and we're all very much for giving people freedom of choice and freedom of expression. So, we as a club will be adhering to it, and we should be going back to the old days of just posting on the website. Who remembers websites, eh? But I'm sure we'll be getting a lot of traffic to the website this weekend, more so than other years, weekends.
Yeah, definitely. I think that just listening to what you said, it is sad that even you've admitted that actually, that particularly if we get relegated this weekend, you would expect, what sounds like an enormous volume of messages derogatory from fans of rival clubs, and it's so sad that actually you're expecting that that's a given, and it really shouldn't be that way. It reminds me, recently I spoke to Beaconsfield MP Joy Morrissey, and she very much said the same sort of thing to me about the level of abusive messages that she receives, and very much playing it down in it's just part of being an MP. And I really think exactly like you're saying with regards to the social media companies, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way if you're an MP. It shouldn't be that way if you're a football club, and particularly somebody like yourself, who is obviously the head of media. You're the guy who gets to read all of these messages, and it must affect your mental health as well.
I think, I have to kind of constantly remind myself that this abuse isn't directed at me, Matt Cecil. It's directed at representative of Wycombe Wanderers. I grew up watching football in the 90s and the noughties, post the kind of 80s hooliganism issues, which I've kind of read and seen a lot about. And it almost kind of felt like pantomime banter back in the day, where you'd throw abuse at the opposition goalkeeper, but he'd turn around and stick his thumbs up at you, and that kind of fun level of camaraderie between opposition clubs. And I think it's evolved now where it is toxic. Now, we have muted well in the hundreds, possibly in the thousands, of numbers of accounts who are clearly fans of rival clubs, who just want to scream abuse at Wycombe Wanderers because they don't like us for whatever reason, or they don't like our players. Quite often we've let them down in an accumulator, and they stood to win thousands of pounds if we won, but we didn't. And really toxic, offensive, abusive messages that I don't need to see that. I don't need to read that. It clogs up a timeline, and I'd rather just see messages from Wycombe Wanderers fans who may have a valid point to raise or a question to ask. And it's far easier to kind of administer the accounts, in that regard. So certainly at the start of the season, there were a lot of fans who wanted to bask in the glory of Wycombe's failings on the pitch. Every time we'd lose a game, those accounts for me just got muted. They just got turned off. They kind of wanted the recognition. They wanted a bite back from the club, or they wanted Wycombe fans to get on their backs. that's the kind of the pathetic side of social media that I don't really want or have time for. So,
and I think that's one of the great things about Wycombe on social media is that you don't go looking. You don't send any silly, snipey messages. And there are certain clubs, and again, we won't name any names that I think very much, have got a case to answer almost, because they do actually wind the fans up by putting certain things on social media, and club officials making certain comments that just really aren't helpful in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's evolved, and I think we were probably, I'd say, guilty of doing so in previous years, but that's probably when we felt it was more pantomime and light-hearted. And I think, when social media came around, clubs were trying to find their identities online, and there are some great examples. I think there was a tweet from Man City right at the start of Twitter's kind of rise to prominence, and it was a Manchester City administrator debating the merits of the new Hyundai logo or something like that. That was completely harmless, and clubs didn't know how to use social media effectively, really. And I think, where we have previously engaged in what we would have considered friendly banter with opposition clubs or fans, we've kind of very deliberately turned away from that now, made the focus about Wycombe Wanderers and Wycombe Wanderers only. We don't want to offend anyone else. We don't want to offend fans of opposition clubs or give them reason to turn against us. Social media is for us to engage with our supporters and not just go looking for likes and nibbles and wanting to go viral just because we've said something derogatory about another club. I think that's a responsibility that all clubs have, really, to try and keep social media and the Twitter football community actually friendly and sane. In a year where the whole world has lost its minds because of the pandemic and lockdown and being deprived doing what we all love, that kind of pent-up frustration, I think, has emerged on social media and given people time and reason to want to turn on each other. And I think football has a part to play in saying, no, actually, let's be kind. Let's acknowledge that we all support different clubs. We want them to win on a Saturday, but let's shake hands at the end of the game and move on. So,
I'm so completely 100% behind that. And you think, the be kind message is so strong. And I think also it's important to acknowledge, that it's not just in football either. It's not just footballers, of course. I've already talked about you as head of media. We also know of a lot of journalists, in particular female journalists, who do seem to, get a huge amount of abuse, just because they are commenting on football.
Yeah. Yeah, it's horrible, and the amount of people that have come off social media because of that. The trolls the bullies shouldn't win, and they feel that they're winning if they're able to prompt a response from somebody, whether it's a public reply or somebody deleting their Twitter account because of abuse. It shouldn't happen. I think the protest is sad in the fact that it is going to deprive the vast majority of fans who use social media for good and want to keep engaged with their clubs. It's a time of solace, isn't it? If Wycombe Wanderers lose a game, quite often fans might feel disappointed, depressed, lonely. They want something back from their football club, and this kind of void of news and information this weekend, it's going to be a real shame for those fans who will just feel a bit distanced from their club. It will be something that we have to try and overcome, obviously, just creating the content we normally would do on social media across the websites. And it is a shame that it has to come to this, that the vast majority of people won't get their usual fix of social media activity because the clubs are taking part in this boycott. But it is time for something to change. And we're pleased to play a part. But as I say, fortunately, I don't think we are anywhere near as kind of victimised as some other clubs or players. It's probably not hit us as hard as it has other clubs, but we stand shoulder to shoulder with those clubs and those players who have been affected, and hope that collectively we can force some form of change.
Yeah, completely. Well, it's been wonderful speaking to you, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And I think, the vast majority of fans completely understand exactly why the club are taking part and, would be 100% behind it.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Bob. And I did say if we do win 15-0 on Saturday, we might need to break the boycott and tell the world about it on social media. But that might be asking too much.
I think that'll be fair enough. I think a 15-0 win, that would, be allowed.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you very much to Matt Cecil. We are almost out of time on the Wycombe Wanderers show this week. We did say that we would mention our new signing, Chris Fruinio Joseph. There we go. We did mention him.
Excellent. we've literally mentioned him. Have a good week. Back at the same time next week.